So you had influenza, COVID, another strain, RSV, and then, like you said, walking pneumonia, which is HMPV. And so this combination is really just overwhelming our body. And it's something where we think, well, I exercise and I eat well and I get out and connect with nature and I go for walks. You're doing all these great things, but sometimes it's just overwhelming. If you have a tsunami of viral particles coming at you, you could build the best seawalls, you can build the strongest buildings, but ultimately that's going to overwhelm your systems.
Did you know that if you looked after just 4 simple pillars of health, you could restore your well-being, boost your energy, and even slow down the aging process? Sounds too good to be true? Today I'm joined by Dr. Owen Wiseman, naturopathic doctor. He runs a successful practice in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, our nation's capital. He is also the medical advisor to A. Vogel. A. Vogel is a Swiss company formulating natural herbal remedies which are distributed throughout the world since 1963. Stick around because we're about to break it all down for you, these 4 pillars and some actionable steps you can take today to feel your best inside and out. Let's get started. Dr. Wiseman is here today, and we are going to talk about the 4 pillars of health. And typically, digestion, stress, sleep, immune health is big right now. And think about a table having 4 legs, and one of the legs is off balance, and the table is going to shift. So these 4 pillars, digestion, stress, sleep, immune health, are so critical to our table being balanced. So welcome, Dr. Wiseman. And what can you say? What are you seeing in your practice or hearing in your practice today?
Well, thanks for having me, Vicky. I think it's a really important time. It's always an important time to talk about health, as we know from the podcast. So right now, I find in practice, there's been conversations on all 4 pillars, but truly it's really been focused on stress, sleep, and immune health. And we know those are so interwoven with each
Yes.
other. We all know how much more prone we are. If we don't get a good night's sleep, you're so much more likely to get sick. And if you are sick, you're probably not sleeping your best either. And now you're stressed about getting things done. So I know for me, you see that common theme in practice, and people have been extra sick lately. There's just a lot going around across Canada, to speak frankly, but also around the world. So one of the things is, how do we support all of the pillars, but focusing on the ones that you might have the most symptoms in right now?
So stress affects your digestion. So, a lot of our anxiety is in our digestive tract. So can you speak to that? Like when we're stressed, we're
And
not
I
digesting, I guess.
And I think we've probably all had that. And at some point, we've probably all experienced the nervous butterflies that we get. Maybe it's a big presentation that you're going to give. And there's a reason why we're seeing rates of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, on the rise. We know that there's a direct correlation between how the mind is communicating, but then also how the gut is reacting. But what we often forget is it is bidirectional. And for everyone listening, you've heard Vicky talk about that bidirectional at some point here, where even everything that you're putting through your gut is contributing to the neurotransmitter production, is contributing to what kind of bacteria are you hosting. Your microbiome in your gut is as unique as your fingerprint. So if we were to use it as a way to kind of track people, it's super unique to you. And that connection between them, if your gut is off, you know that mentally you're not going to be feeling your best, because maybe your serotonin production has dropped. Maybe your dopamine receptors have become less sensitive and you're not getting those strong reward signals for what you're doing anymore. And I think that bidirectional is something that we often think about it as being more one-way highway.
Yeah. But also, like you're talking about serotonin, but also cortisol, because if you're stressed, your cortisol is up. And so you're trying to go to sleep at night and your cortisol is up.
Exactly. The way I'll often explain it to patients, and it's a bit of a dated explanation, I think, but if you were thinking back to hunter-gatherer time and you're running from a cougar or a bear or a lion, It's not exactly time for your body to signal, hey, now would be a perfect time to have a bowel movement.
Oh,
All you're focusing on is surviving and getting away. So
yes.
that example is usually really potent for us to understand that when our cortisol is high, when our adrenaline is pumping through our body, not the best time to rest and digest.
But we're not being chased by wild animals. So, what would be something today that would elevate our cortisol?
We probably all have a bit of a
Practical.
trauma response to hearing the Microsoft Teams ping as the
Oh,
message come
yeah,
through or an
yeah.
email comes
Yes,
through.
yes. I've
And then
taken my notifications off my phone because, yeah, it's true. I just want to use my calculator. And next thing you know, I'm down this rabbit hole on Instagram or something. It's like, whoa, what am I
absolutely.
doing?
The doom scrolling is so
Distractions,
easy.
distractions.
And it's a
Yeah.
world of distraction. And it's a
Yes. Yeah.
distraction from our health, from our job, but really at its core, distraction from stress. That's what it kind of
Hmm.
comes down to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
our bodies don't understand the difference between I'm getting chased by a wild animal and
Right.
this is my boss just emailed me about the status update on that project and oh my gosh, I haven't worked on it all week and I
Yeah. Yeah.
forgot and the
Yeah.
deadline's coming up.
Yeah.
The body doesn't know the difference.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And then the cortisol's up, so you don't sleep.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And how
And
do
then
we
you don't
calm?
sleep and your immune system's weak. And then, you go to the office or wherever, your kids go to school, they come home, they bring a virus home and yeah,
Everything.
sniffles and yeah, and then you go plummet.
I always joke too with parents. I go, I know you're here for your immune health, but at the end of the day, do you have a young child at home? And if they say yes, now it's a new type of conversation because that child is almost always patient zero in the house.
So give me some suggestions, like just some practical and even like digestion. How would someone know that something's off? Okay, bloating, gas, not having bowel movements, as you said. How would they know something's off? What's right for them? Or sleeping? Sleeping, we know because that's, pretty standard. And especially like I get people coming in the store, oh, I've tried melatonin. I've done 1 milligram, 3, 5, 10. It doesn't work for me. Or I get kind of foggy in the morning and I don't like that feeling. So, what are some solutions though? If we could work on one pillar at a time, and then I think all those other ones would start balancing out.
Yeah, and that's a really good approach. And I think that's why there's a bit of a shift in conversation away from almost the symptom relief of the industry, but that's what we're used to, right? I have elbow pain, I go see my family doctor, I get naproxen, I get ibuprofen, I get celecoxib. And so it is very, we live in a symptom relief world right now, an acute reactive healthcare system. And a big part of that is we don't want to see that bleeding into the natural health world and the wellness world too much. We want to really be proactive with all those pillars and understand these are all connected. So it's just like you said with digestion. I always find paying attention, just tuning into your body in itself, doing a body scan, that can yield so much information and data about your body. And it's incredible how seldom we do check in with our bodies because it is that world of distraction. So if you've got to pack lunches, send that email, get that project done, did you take the kid to the dentist appointment? Oh, and I got to take my mom to an appointment. Where is the time to sit there and go, hmm, I had that dairy product. I'm kind of feeling a little grumbly right now in the tummy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and it's the dopamine fix, like I was saying about this, the cell phone and the notifications. And so, oh well, this is my time, and I scroll, 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 and I think I'm tuning in, but like to my body, I'm giving it a bit of a break, but you're stimulating your brain when you're scrolling,
Hmm.
scrolling, scrolling, and then at 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, okay, what did I do? I'm hungry, and I can't sleep because I've been on the phone, or on scrolling through whatever social media you like,
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I find turning, like you said, turning them off, that's immediately a very applicable thing that a lot of people can do. I know for myself, if I have a physical hard copy of a book, I'm really good at not reading. So or not using my phone. I've found that for me, that's been the most effective tool. I also have a number of kind of the social media blocker apps that at a certain time, the phone kicks in and it will block me out from those, which is a really good thing. And it has helped me break the habit because I find that's just it, like you said, with the dopamine pathway. It's just a habit, and any habit can be changed. Not saying it's easy, but any habit can be changed. So for my family, I'm not a big TV watcher, but if we are watching TV, we always do it with dinner because at the end of the day, then afterwards we'll go for our walk, and that's the end of big screen time for the rest of the evening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then you can put timers on your phone too. So, okay, your hour's up or your half hour's up, move on kind of thing.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to be informed, but you don't want to be obsessive. Okay, so I want to talk about sleep because how, like I said, people are doing melatonin and they're saying, oh, it's not working for me. So we have products that have GABA, L-theanine, California poppy, so
Hmm.
those kind of things to calm the mind. So I usually tell people, or I ask people, are you falling asleep okay, or you're waking up in the middle of the night? And because it can be two different reasons, and that's how I sort of guide them. But sleep is a big one right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the main word that you hit there is guide. Everybody is different, and I think that's one thing that I know for myself. I don't respond well to melatonin. It makes me feel incredibly hungover no matter how low the dose is. And there is some really concerning data to a degree coming out because it's been marketed as this ubiquitous quick fix for everybody, where when we look down at data from the United States through a couple of years, you see that poisoning in children as a result of
Oh
melatonin
my
ingestions
goodness. Oh
have
my
risen
goodness.
every single year for the past,
Ooh.
I think, 7 or 8 years for the data, with kids even landing in the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
So
At one
it's
milligram?
it doesn't, it provides a range of the milligrams,
Okay.
but we often suffer from this idea, well, if a little's good, more must be better.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is not appropriate to be giving children 10
No.
milligram
No.
doses in
No.
except for very, very specific cases where their medical team has come to that decision for that child.
Yeah.
And it's something that I will see in practice, and I'm sure you see it in the store where people come in and they go, oh, well, I'm looking for this. And we treat it as such a benign, innocuous
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
that's how do we shift that conversation
Yeah,
away?
yeah,
And
and it's hard for parents though because their kids might be ADHD and pretty
mm,
hyper and they're on Ritalin or any of those medications, so they're told to do melatonin and that's what they do. But I did not hear that, so I'm gonna look into that a little bit more. That's
mhm.
scary.
It is concerning,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
speaks to a larger, I think, societal
yeah,
concern where
yeah,
we're going,
yeah,
oh, I
yeah.
just want my kid to sleep. I'm
Yes,
stressed
yeah,
out. I'm not
yeah,
sleeping
yeah,
because my
yeah.
kid's not sleeping.
Well, and the other thing, Dr. Wiseman, I feel like like you said, your body gives you data, and we need to step back from what's going on in our day to day, our week to week, and step back and slow down. Stop, well, it's starting with the phone or the social media, but step back. What's for dinner? Are you running through a drive-through or, you're just picking up a frozen entree at the grocery store? Like, take some time to really think about what you're doing. And I know that can be a stress too, because it's another, and it usually falls on the woman. I mean, men contribute as well to the whole financial support of the household, but mostly it's the woman. But anyway, just like step back or ask for help. Get your kids cutting vegetables or get the kids involved, get them off their, devices as well. And easier said than done sometimes, but yeah, we need to step back as a society, and whatever's going on out there, it's looking after you. And we talked a little bit about this aging process because how you live in your 30s and 40s is going to affect your 50s and 60s and going forward. So we need to take these steps.
And I think that's something really applicable too that you said is involve your kids in the kitchen when we're looking
Mhm.
at immune health, when we're looking at digestion and stress and sleep and hormonal balance.
Mhm.
If you can start, the best gift you can give your kids is starting them on good, healthy food habits
Yep.
young. And
Yep.
there are so many kits online and in
Mhm.
stores, in your local stores, that you can get. And the knife isn't sharp enough that it's going to cut your kid's hand,
Mm,
but
mm-hmm.
it's sharp enough that it could at least go through a soft piece of mango or a
Yeah,
soft strawberry.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
way they're learning and they're
yeah,
engaging. And
yeah.
because you're increasing kind of food security and food knowledge, now that's actually going to help you reduce,
Mm-hmm.
picky eating behaviors or
Mm-hmm.
restrictive eating behaviors
Mm-hmm.
later
Mm-hmm.
on and really help the kid develop a healthy relationship, which then if they're pulling in more nutrients in their gut,
Mm-hmm.
supports their growth, their neurological development. And when we talk about this healthy aging, those are habits that are going to
Yes.
be way better for them decades
Yeah,
down the
yeah,
line.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's touching food, smelling food, tasting food. It's all those
Yes.
senses.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. So we touched on digestion, we touched on sleep, a little bit about stress. What are
Mhm.
your suggestions for stress for people that are,
I feel
I mean,
feeling
it's a
stressed.
broad, and I said, step back, assess, and yeah.
The biggest thing is that guide conversation. So it's really identifying one, what are your triggers? And it's no different from allergies. If you don't know what you're allergic against, what battles are you fighting? If you don't know that it's snow mold that you're allergic to or this certain type of tree pollen, how do you plan around which month are my symptoms going to be worse? When do I need to start being proactive with my allergy and immune support? So it's the same with stress. There are many people really comfortable with public speaking. They're going to go on stage, they're going to give a presentation in the boardroom. No issue. They thrive on it. And then there's a lot of people going, oh, I am not looking forward to this. I am already stressed out and it's in a week. My palms are sweaty, my heart rate is up, my breathing rate is up. And that is the main thing. Identify your trigger. And when we go back to that body scan idea and checking in with yourself, what makes you feel that? Because if you can identify it, you can take steps to plan or prevent. And at the end of the day, the big thing next is look what your body is responding to. So you mentioned a whole bunch of different options, or like the California poppy, there's passion flower, there's GABA, there's L-tryptophan. Not everybody is going to respond to the same. And that's the danger of just broad applying, everyone will benefit from this one product. That's not the way that it goes. Maybe for some people, their serotonin levels are a little bit lower in the body. And we know that California poppy can play a really cool role in serotonin production and modulation. Amazing. That is going to be really targeted for you. But then there's other things like passion flower, we know has some GABA affinity. And GABA is the main brain chemical in the body. And I think all of us could use a little more now and again. And so for them, we're going, maybe you try the passion flower because it's going to give you that GABA action and calm the mind, but not in an addictive way, not in a I need it way, like often the benzodiazepines have. And then you look at something like L-tryptophan. L-tryptophan is, we often connect it to turkey at Thanksgiving, but it is the precursor in that serotonin pathway. So maybe you don't need the end product, you actually need the precursor, which gets converted to 5-HTP and then serotonin. So I really like, and things like L-tryptophan you can find in products like the Goodnight Sleep Sachets, which because they're sleep sachets, you're just ripping them, pouring it in your mouth, and that's very fast acting because it gets absorbed in the lining of the cheeks and the tongue. Whereas something like a capsule, something like a tablet, like we have our relax tabs, and so
Yes,
those ones
those are
have,
good. Yeah.
yeah,
And there's a
valerian,
spray one.
and there's the spray one, and those are kind of the AM, PM. So if you're someone who's sitting there ruminating, maybe the
Yes.
relax tabs are
Yeah,
better.
yeah. I was gonna say you're talking about that, the lettuce leaf
Yes,
that's in the
yeah.
sleep. I've never heard of that.
It's
How
a
does
new product
that?
to Canada.
Yeah, yeah, but lettuce leaf? Like you can't just eat lettuce, but it's a herb. I don't
That,
know.
that that
I've
was
never.
the big joke kind of in the when we were talking about how do we explain it to people, and they're going to think, oh, I'll just consume a big bowl of lettuce. But it was really interesting because when you kind of harken back to ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, and the Greco-Roman times, they would boil lettuce leaf. And because lettuce was relatively widely grown, it was affordable and accessible for a lot of different demographics. You could you could make this in your own farm and on your own homestead. And then now what you're doing is you get to boil the lettuce leaf and that boiled water, that end product kind of acted like a tincture in the sense of it. So they would drink that before bed to calm the mind and go to sleep. So the lettuce leaf is really interesting because it acts similarly to passion flower or something like lemon balm, where it's got the GABA action. But what I really like is for people who have kind of tried everything else on the market. The Goodnight product is the first product on the Canadian market at this time of recording that what do you have to lose? If you're not sleeping, this is something you've never tried. And if it works, phenomenal. And if not, you're still just where you were before, so
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
lost.
So when you say now people are going to go try boiling lettuce leaves,
Yeah.
so is there any specific lettuce like romaine or not iceberg lettuce?
This is specifically Lactuca sativa, and I would say the benefit of technological advancement is
Yes.
we have learned there are very specific conditions that are going to release the most active compounds. The
Okay.
lactucin and lactosylpycerin are the two kind of
Okay.
main
Okay.
chemical compounds.
Okay.
And for those, if you're boiling at a really high temperature, you have to think part of the benefit of a lot of plants is
True.
the volatile
True.
oils,
Yeah.
and now you've evaporated
Yeah.
those off.
Yeah. True.
So it might have worked weakly when they would
Right.
boil it, but now we
Hmm.
have a way that we've optimized the extraction because we have that technology to
Yes.
discover,
Yeah.
whoa, we
Yeah.
get 80% more if we do it this way versus that way.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of that, so and I'm sure you remember this a number of years ago, there was a product on the market, everyone was swarming in for it. But when it wasn't available anymore, so I was telling people B12 and tart cherry. B12 helps the pineal gland produce its own melatonin. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that actually is a really neat concept, even with the L-tryptophan as well,
Mm-hmm.
because L-tryptophan is involved in the serotonin production, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also involved in melatonin production. And that is one thing that I really like working with because it is what we call endogenous production. If you give your body the building blocks it
Yes.
needs,
Mm-hmm.
tens of thousands of years of evolution have shown it
Yeah,
exactly
it
what it needs
knows
to
what
do
to
with
do with
that.
it.
And
That's
that's
right.
work with the body.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
no different from when we look at concepts like using steroid injections. You're using what's called an exogenous outside the body steroid
Mm-hmm.
injection. So your testicles will shrink because your body's all about resource conservation and efficiency. And it's going, this is
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. If I don't have to expend time or resources on producing my own steroids because I'm getting them from somewhere else, I'm going to focus my attention elsewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's one of the main side effects is that your body just shuts down its natural steroid production to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm getting something outside the body as an end product, does your body start to shift that efficiency a little bit? So I really like the concept of use the L-tryptophan in the sleep sachets to actually become the end product of not only serotonin to help you wake up
Mm-hmm.
feeling,
Mm-hmm.
it might not be singing to birds, but it's you're
You can get
welcoming the
up.
day a bit
Yeah.
brighter.
No, but with L-tryptophan though, I like people that are on antidepressants, I don't
Mhm.
recommend tryptophan. So just as a disclaimer.
Yeah, I often will look at dosing. So it's the nice thing with the sachet where often if it's a capsule or if it's a tablet, it's hard to kind of break it into the right dosing structure for you. The thing I really like about the powder is you can almost titrate up. So you can start with kind of a quarter dose, see how you respond. And not just one night. That's the main thing with stress sleep is there are so many different factors and variables that can affect whether you sleep well or not. Something as simple as, hey, we had a 16-degree day in March, and so the house has held on to a lot more warmth than it typically would, which means your bedroom is probably a bit warmer than it typically is. You didn't do anything. It's just a warmer day that's going to affect your sleep quality. So usually try that quarter dose kind of for a number of days. And this is something that they can chat with their care provider to really figure out what's a specific protocol for me based on my different prescriptions.
Right, right. Yeah, so like I said, I'm always cautious about L-tryptophan, and we just ask people if they're on any sort of antidepressant. So again, we talked digestion, stress, sleep, but immune health. And you were telling me earlier that all these viruses are just kind of building on each other. And what I'm hearing is walking pneumonia. A lot of people, not so much now, but through the winter, people were diagnosed with pneumonia and it's not clearing up.
No, and we were in a really interesting time for this past season where you'll start to see that kind of winter peak usually occurring almost in late October. You see the influenza A numbers start to increase a little bit. And when you actually look at Canadian data for different viral peaks throughout the season, they tend to follow one after the other. So for anyone who's listening, going, man, I am sick just all the time, or my kids are sick, and we just kind of pass it along through the family. Well, it's like you said, maybe someone from daycare brought home respiratory syncytial virus, RSV. So you had to deal with that, and your kid was sick. And because the kid was sick, their body was weak, their defense was down. Now they've gotten influenza, and they bring that back to parent or guardian. And then it just fluctuates. So you had influenza, COVID, another strain, RSV, and then, like you said, walking pneumonia, which is HMPV. And so this combination is really just overwhelming our body. And it's something where we think, well, I exercise and I eat well and I get out and connect with nature and I go for walks. You're doing all these great things, but sometimes it's just overwhelming. If you have a tsunami of viral particles coming at you, you could build the best seawalls, you can build the strongest buildings, but ultimately that's going to overwhelm your systems. So it's really, how do we figure out a pattern that works for you? And it's easy to go online and say, well, I should do this. Maybe you don't want to go on the treadmill for 30 minutes. That's not your
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
That's okay. What
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
you want to do though?
Yeah. Yeah. But if all this stressors like on your system, then rest. Big thing is
Rest.
rest. And like I said, pull yourself back, evaluate, yeah, what's going on. Yeah.
And take something preventatively. That's
Mm-hmm.
it's another big aspect is, again, our system is currently designed for, well, care about your health when you get sick enough to care
Mm-hmm.
about your health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, part of wellness is prevention and being proactive. So for my family, we are taking some form of Echinoforce every single
I was
day.
gonna say, yeah, yeah.
I've got the junior at home. I've got the extra strength for when you really
Yes.
feel that sniffle.
Yeah.
I've got sore
Yeah.
throat spray that I use when we go see our friends and their kids. When I,
Mm-hmm.
even something as simple as going into Costco, there's a lot of people
Yeah.
at Costco. So I'm often spraying it before
Yeah.
going into
Yeah.
the
That's a
the
good
arena.
idea. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So what is echiniforce?
Echinoforce. It's a
Echinoforce.
tomato, every
Okay. Okay.
pronunciation.
Yeah. Oh,
And
well, for
with
people that don't know what that is.
so it's a cold and flu line from a Vogel. And it's a bold claim when you hear it. It's the most researched immune product in Canada. And that one is echinacea. It's a long established type of echinacea, a purpurea. But then the other products have different ingredients depending on what it is. So with our something like our hot drink, you also have elderberry in there, which elderberry is just so lovely for cold and flu, and it's got a natural sweetness to it. So it just adds a little bit of, takes away some of the bitterness of often some of the tinctures or plant products. Things like our sore throat spray, that is also the same echinacea base, but now you have sage added in, which is incredibly antimicrobial, and a little bit of peppermint. So when you're using that sore throat spray, it's very cooling when you have that really irritated swallow and dry, inflamed throat.
Hmm. And would the peppermint help for digestion?
And the peppermint's nice for digestion too.
Okay, like it's enough in there. Not that you're using it for that, but sometimes
It'll help to
that's
stimulate
upset.
saliva too, which
Okay,
is a bit of a
okay,
benefit there.
okay. All right.
Because the saliva we have to think is filled with, amylase and all these different enzymes that do in fact
Yes,
have antimicrobial activity as well.
yes, yes, yes. All right. So I want our listeners or our viewers to take away like what's going on with you. So we talked about these four pillars: digestion, stress, sleep, and the immune system. So assess what's going on with you, fix one of the pillars or work on one of the pillars, and then it will start helping some of the other pillars as well. And my big thing is sleep. With sleep, I find that we go to bed any time of the night, in the morning, 6 a.m., our alarm goes off. So I tell people set an alarm for the night, and go to bed, whether it's 9, 10, 11, whatever your time is, and just make sure you go to bed and your body will regulate.
Exactly. Sleep for me is, I know there are four pillars, but sleep for me is definitely a core pillar. And I'm the same. My body will wake me up 5:30, the same time every single day, no matter how late I go to bed. And that for me has really highlighted the importance that I do need to start my wind down routine by, 9 o'clock. And I need to be kind of lights out and asleep by 10 to feel my most optimal. It's not always doable, but I really try.
But I mean, if it's the majority of the 7 days of the week, then yes. And then if you're getting your sleep, then I think your digestion is going to work better,
Sure.
your immune system's going to be stronger, and you might experience a little less stress.
Exactly. And in the interest of myth busting, one of the big things
Oh,
is for every hour of sleep that you have missed, we often
mm.
think, I'll catch up on the weekend.
Oh, right.
It takes 4 nights of regular routine sleep to make up that 1 hour. So if you're sitting there
Interesting.
going, oh, Saturday morning, I'll just sleep in, that
Yes.
does not work.
No, no.
Does
And the
not
day you
work.
think that, that's when the kids get up early, more
Exactly.
earlier than
Setting yourself
usual.
up for
Yeah,
failure.
yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great, Dr. Wiseman. Thank you so much for taking the time to, come on this
Pleasure, Vicky.
podcast and just, we can pick your brain for all this information, but this has been wonderful. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. And everyone listening, look after your 4 pillars.
Yes. I do hope you found value in today's episode. Let me know in the comments below which pillar you are working on. And if you are enjoying these videos, give me a like, a subscribe, leave a comment. I look at all the comments. Every time you interact with this channel, you are helping it to grow, and it is very much appreciated.